Good to see you again, sleepyheads. You always arrive a little early, the way people do when they sense something meaningful is about to unfold. Before Silas steps into the morning light, a word from the voice behind the clock. You know, the one who winds these walks, leans back, and lets time do what it's always done. You see, today isn't remembered for what happens next. It's remembered for how ordinary everything feels right before it does. Coffee cooling in forgotten cups, radios murmuring half heard truths, sunlight landing exactly where it always has, unaware it's touching a world about to change. That's why this is the perfect place for a quiet walk. You see, history right here isn't loud, it's close. It's breathing softly, holding its breath. If you find comfort wandering the fragile edges of humanity, take your time, settle in, walk with the sleepy circle. Let's begin.
Chapter 1 The Echo of Cities. Welcome, listeners. I'm Silas, your slightly sleep-deprived tour guide through time. If you enjoy my voice softly narrating humanity's strangest mornings, go ahead and like the video. It helps more dreamers find their way here. Subscribe, tap the bell, and tell me where you're listening from, assuming your city still exists and hasn't been rebranded as Scenic Evacuation Zone C. And if you're from the year 1 billion AD, congrats on the sunscreen. You're going to need a forklift. Now, take a slow breath in and out. We're walking into the last morning on Earth. Don't panic. We'll keep it quiet. If the apocalypse had an ASMR channel, this would be it. The first sound is almost nothing. The steady whisper of a drone somewhere above me, a patient arc through thinning air. Beneath it, the long, tired exhale of a wind tower surrendering to gravity, its carbon fiber blade snapping with the grand dignity of a burnt breadstick. The city ahead is all vertebrae and scars. Skyscrapers lean like old teeth. Facades once mirrored the sky. Now the glass has flowed and slumped from a century of ultraviolet tantrums, becoming rippled sheets that hold the dawn like water in a cupped hand. The sun is too big for its job. Reddish, swollen, glaring with the unsubtle charisma of a retired god who refuses to leave the stage. I step over a tangle of smart cable as brittle as angel hair and skirt a collapsed transit stanchion that still blinks a friendly green walk, because optimism is a firmware bug. Dust, fine as talc and tasting faintly metallic, lifts with my footfalls and settles in slow motion, glinting like confetti at a farewell party no one attended. The towers around me loom. Their lower floors are choked with dune shapes that were once plazas and trains, and the occasional heroic sculpture, now all equally anonymous under a sheet of ochre. The city feels like a fossil you could climb into. There's a coffee kiosk mummified in resin where a barista once promised human-grade espresso. Someone had scrawled a smiley face in the resin before it cured. The grin is warped, sincere in a melted way. Street-level gardens that tried to outlast the heat now display the final palette of photosynthesis. White veins, copper skeletons, a stubborn bruised green clinging to the shaded undersides. In the husk of a restaurant, chairs still face a view that no longer has the courtesy to be beautiful. A menu scroll on the wall flickers its last loop. Brunch, 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 which feels on brand for a species that expired while arguing about poached eggs. I pass the skeleton of a vertical farm. Its racks hang empty, a cathedral nave of rails and drip lines. Once, there were tomatoes engineered to blush in 160% visible light. Now, the last vines crackle under my fingertips like old paper. In the distance, something sags and falls with a settling sigh, and a flock of maintenance drones rises in a lazy spiral to investigate. They're the city's remaining citizens, silver beetles with fading directives. One tilts a lens at me, finds no useful data point in my continued existence, and drifts on. I appreciate the professionalism. The air has the taste of hot pennies and forgotten rain. Every few breaths you can smell the sun, ozone and ion, a scorched citrus tang. The horizon vibrates. Heat-stacked layers make the far towers shimmy, as if the world were a mirage testing its mirrors one last time. I think of all the mornings I've walked through other endings. Empires shuttering themselves, libraries boiling to ash, cities learning new names that don't fit. This one is quieter. No speeches, no flags, just the big red light in the sky and a calendar that finally ran out of vocabulary. A crackle rolls through the atmosphere like distant cellophane. I look up. The sky has opened a vein. Ribbons of plasma spill outward from the solar limb, uncoiling with slow arrogance. It's not fireworks, it's anatomy. A coronal mass ejection unfurls like molten silk, braiding and unbraiding, threads of light looping back into the star or snapping free to drape across space. For a moment, all the glass in the city glows from the inside. Tower shafts blush like coals. The reflective scraps in the sidewalks become a constellation at my boots. Daylight pours into the city's deepest pores, and the shadows light up like they've remembered their childhood. It's beautiful, I mutter, because honesty is still free. The kind of beauty that comes with a refund policy, non-existent. A wash of charged particles arranges my arm hair into bar graphs. The air hums gently, like the universe clearing its throat. Far above, an orbital ring once girdled the planet, a string of pearls for a world that liked to accessorize. Now the pearls are dust, and that dust is returning to sender. The breeze shifts, and the street fills with a pale glitter. At first, I think ice. Then I taste metal on my tongue and hear it. The faintest chittering, not quite sound, like whispers under water. It's satellite confetti, micro shards with baked-in memory, pages torn from servers that once held everyone's everything. A localized storm sweeps around the corner, shimmering like a school of fish. I cover my mouth with my scarf and stand sideways, letting the gust spend itself along my profile. The particles hiss against my coat and skitter along the street, snagging in the seams of ruined concrete. Where they pile, they twitch with a residual electrostatic life and murmur code fragments as they discharge. Hello, and hello, and I laugh before I can help it. Quiet, respectful. The cloud finally came down to earth, I say, and the dust answers by snagging in my hair like particularly affectionate stardust. The storm thins. I brush my shoulders with long, slow strokes, as if cleaning ash from a friend, and keep walking toward the ocean. That isn't there. Between the towers, the air opens into a sun-bleached wound where a river once threaded through. Someone, ages ago, paved half the channel with mirrored flags to bounce light back into the city's belly. Now those plates are buckled and peeled, bright scales on the back of a dying, glamorous thing. Beyond the wound, hanging where the bay used to be, an island glides against the lungs of the sky, the floating isle of solar mirrors, a slow waltz of hexagonal panes and support spars, a drifting cathedral built to seduce photons and funnel them home through laser-thin corridors. It moves like a thought, quiet and improbable. The panels are scarred by micrometeors, their edges fogged by a century of thermal fatigue, but when the sun tilts just right, The whole structure flares like a coin flicked into a fountain. Shadow ripples downstream. City blocks blink and wake, as the island's facets preen. I take a maglev stare that still pretends to be dignified, sliding up a shaft that smells faintly of burnt sugar. On a breezeway high above street level, the city is less ruin and more diagram, outlines and vectors, a sketch prepared for an argument that never happened. The aisles support tethers hum as they oscillate, a sound you feel more in your teeth than your ears. A maintenance platform floats near the tether couplings, tethered to the tether, a recursion that makes me grin. 2 drones huddle there in the shade of a broken service canopy, snipping at a cable, resplicing, snipping, resplicing, Sisyphus with wire cutters. Their cooling fans click like crickets. I raise a hand in salute. One turns a sensor toward me, logs the gesture as possible bird, and returns to its eternity. The breeze stiffens into something that has opinions. The solar flare's tail meets the upper atmosphere in the city's mag fields, and the sky responds with a sheeted glow, curtains of crimson and tangerine that would make any aurora in history die of professional jealousy. The mirrors above me respond automatically, servo motors whirring, tilting against the new geometry of light. Every pivot throws a fan of brilliance down the avenues. Light drips and pools and runs along the glass like molten milk. Shadows aren't so much cast as negotiated. My own silhouette tugs forward, backward, splits, reunites, like it's trying to remember choreography. Heat climbs my cheeks with a familiar intimacy. Even this far into the slow ending, I'm still surprised by how warm light can feel when the air's too thin to properly carry it. The world is a radiant oven. You don't sweat, you glaze. The exposed steel of the breezeway rails blurs at the edges, a visible shiver as micro-crystal structures change their minds about who they want to be. I lay my gloved hand against the rail. The glove hardens at the palm, a built-in reflex, and I feel the heat as a pressure, a gentle, insistent push. Go on. Move along. The morning has places to be. A wind tower below, stubborn to the end, offers up one last groan and folds like a dancer bowing too low. Its fall is slow enough to narrate. The turbine's spindle kisses a rooftop garden, scatters a bouquet of fossil leaves, then rests against a ventilation spine as if it had meant to do exactly that. The sound travels up the street and dissolves in the auroral hiss. Everything here is practicing silence. I walk the breezeway toward the edge of the old waterfront. The aisle drifts with me, a whale-sized compass needle adjusting to the solar weather. Its underside is a hive of black radiators and fluid lines, heat exchangers the size of stadium doors. In a saner century, they kept the panels from boiling themselves. Now they glow like the fading embers of a long argument with entropy. Occasionally, a valve pops open and a plume of superheated gas sighs into the air, transparent, yet so hot the space above it distorts like a thought you can't quite formulate. The plumes tremble in the light, and every tremble lays a new line of glare across the city's bones. A gust claws up from the boulevard and tosses a new set of glitter at me. A denser storm, heavier flakes that click like tiny teeth when they strike the rail. These aren't satellite shavings, they're larger, irregular, like broken daggers of mirror coating and antenna foil. The pieces dance, then settle around my boots. Lines of code wink on and off where nanocapsules still carry phantom charge. USR, local, hello, end. The internet's last aria, repeating because repetition is a form of prayer. I crouch, pinch a shard between my fingers. It hums, then quiets. There's a slumped plaza just below the breezeway, its amphitheater benches half swallowed by dust. I drop down to it and sit on a step till the city's breath finds my pace. The aisle continues its stately drift, mirrored facets flickering like a school of fish turning in sunlight. Far out, beyond the tip of the old sea wall, the basin shimmers with something that is not water. Evaporate fields ribbon the ground. Chemical foam pops and releases little ghosts of methane that ignite without enthusiasm, like candles lighting themselves for no audience. The smell arrives late, mineral sweetness with a sour edge. I imagine all the oceans leaving the party early, shaking hands at the door, promising to text. I tilt my head back and watch the sun. It feels more sky than politeness recommends. Dark filaments cross its face, magnetic snags, violent as they are exquisite. I can feel the old words rising in me, aphelion and perigee, photosphere, chromosphere, coronal loops, language built to catalog wonder. We named what we loved, and then we learned how to build mirrors to court it, and then we watched both outlast us. There's a lesson in that, but it's early to be grading ourselves. Another flare lifts and drapes itself along the limb like a scarf tossed over a shoulder. The city answers with a subtle crackle as residual charge bleeds along grounded rails. It's the sound of a gigantic vinyl record after a long silence, the pop and hiss before the song begins. Except the song is ending. Or maybe this is the bridge, my favorite part. I stand and brush the glitter from my knees. My shadow leans forward across the amphitheater, long and thin, and for a moment it looks like I have company. I smile at the idea. On mornings like this, loneliness is a sculptor, but even it has to admit the workmanship of light. The drone that's been tailing me circles once and settles on the step below, folding its arms with the air of a tired pigeon. It vents a gentle puff of air at my ankle, a mechanical sigh. I take it as encouragement. Come on, I tell it, and by extension you. There's more to see before the day decides we're done. I take the stair down to the old harbor road, a ribbon of blackened composite that still remembers being traffic. The breeze carries another skin of glitter and lays it thinly over everything, bollards, railings, my shoulders, like the planet is trying to sugarcoat the goodbye. Ahead, the floating aisle swings steady and bright, and the mirrors cut a path of liquid light across the city's ribs. It feels theatrical, extravagant, a final bow placed on the stage by a crew that knew the audience had already gone home. This, I think, is the secret of last mornings. They don't slam doors. They leave them ajar and let the light decide what to do with the room. Civilization plays back its own dream, the buildings, the drones, the whispering code, while the sun rehearses the oldest trick in the universe, becoming too much of itself. I step into the glare and keep walking, heart quiet, mouth dry, eyes open. The day is already longer than the species, and it has room for both of us. Chapter 2. The Breath of Phelan Worlds. The sky changes color the way a bruise does, slow, layered, not asking permission. I leave the skeleton of the megacity behind, and the air opens out, flat and exposed. The ground here is a map of fractures, long black seams of cooled glass where the soil literally melted and then regretted it. Old roads are just pale scars in the crust now, leading nowhere, which honestly feels on brand. In the distance, something glitters in a repeating curve. Not water, because those days are done, but glass. Hothouse ribs, geodesic arcs, the last polite bubbles humanity blew for itself before the heat came to collect. The last green domes. They sit like pearls someone dropped in a kiln. Some are already slumped, panels blistered and caved inward, skeletal braces poking out like ribs through scorched skin. Others still hold their shape, more or less, humming the thin, desperate hum of systems that were not designed for star turns into a furnace. As I get closer to the nearest dome, the air picks up the faintest suggestion of humidity. My throat tightens. You wouldn't notice it in any other era. You'd just breathe and move on with your day and complain about frizz. But now, it's like smelling a word you haven't heard since childhood. There's a narrow service corridor leading up to the access hatch. Half the hatch is fused shut from heat warp. The other half is ajar, but only because something hit it hard on the way out. The metal is bent outward in a curve, like a door trying to become a flower petal. The sealant along the break has bubbled and gone chalky. Fans groan somewhere inside, struggling to push cool into an environment that defines cool as not immediately cooking. The dome itself is beautiful in a way that is both hopeful and obscene. Inside, a little forest still tries. Trees, real trees, not carbon tower oxygen extruders, arch and tangle, leaves broad and waxy, engineered to hold their water like misers. Vines drape from tension cables like green silk. There's a small constructed pond beneath the shade of something that might once have been oak, now with armor-thick bark ridged like dragon hide. The water isn't clear. It's dense, viscous, nutrient-rich, soup pretending it's a lake. Small things move in it, flashes like coins tumbling in the dark. Fish, yes, technically. They blink bioluminescent threads along their sides in little pulses. Still here, still here, still here. I press my palm to the dome skin. It answers with a shiver. The harmonic of the climate regulator is wrong. You can feel it in your teeth. It's supposed to be soft, subaudible, the constant heartbeat of atmosphere maintenance. Instead, it's sharp, wobbly, like a violin string that snapped and someone tied the ends together with faith. I can see, up in the lattice of the dome's ceiling, where two panels have spiderwebbed with micro-fractures. Each crack glows faintly blue, like veins lit from inside. Heat bleed. Containment failure. Hey, I whisper, because sometimes you talk to architecture the way you talk, to friends holding on. You did good. The dome flickers. It's not a metaphor. The air itself shimmers in a sudden wave, like the whole place just inhaled and exhaled wrong. I catch a scent that almost drops me where I stand. Damp loam, crushed mint, that sharp, living green you get when you pull up weeds with your bare hands. It hits memories I didn't know I'd kept like someone striking a bell inside my ribs. Then the shield gives. It doesn't explode. There's no cinematic shattering, no shower of glittering shards in slow motion. The failure is intimate and mean. One of the panels up top just softens, like candy under a torch. The sealant along its seams bubbles, pops, and in that pop, the dome sighs out a lungful of cool air. The world pounces. Superheated atmosphere slams inward, and the oxygen-rich garden slams outward, and those two truths meet like lovers who never agreed on terms. The vines nearest the breach blacken and whip like struck snakes. The pooled water foams, flashes to steam, and in an instant becomes a white plume punching upward so fast it shears leaves from branches. And the trees, gods, the trees, they ignite in blue-green. I've seen a lot of fire in a lot of centuries. Library fire, riot fire, siege fire, ship fire. None of them look like this. This is chlorophyll screaming. Flame runs up the outer skin of each leaf, not orange but teal, almost gentle at first, like phosphorescence on a midnight wave. Then it deepens into turquoise, hungry but controlled, outline in each vein, curling each edge in a perfect glowing silhouette before devouring the body. It moves in silence. Heat that intense doesn't bother to make noise anymore. It just erases. In less time than it takes to apologize, a canopy that took centuries of engineering burns like lace. There's a moment where every leaf in the dome has become a tiny lantern, thousands of them hanging in midair, suspended in a draft that no longer exists. I swear on what's left of the species that it is one of the most beautiful things I have ever seen, an entire ecosystem having its last thought at once. A garden on fire. I breathe. My visor is fogging, and still more alive than most of us ever were. The bioluminescent fish boil. The pond lifts in a single shimmering bulge and collapses in a hiss of steam, leaving behind a blackened crater ringed in glass. A handful of insects, yes, insects, honest-to-God winged insects, make a frantic swirl near the breach, little flashes of iridescence. 2 make it to the shadow under a fallen support rib. 1 doesn't. Survival is petty like that. I back away as the dome sags. The frame, robbed of its cool interior, slumps like a lung at the end of a sob. The blue-green flame gutters to dull ember red. The last of the leaves fall and vanish on contact with the ground, go into ash without bothering with the courtesy of smoke. And then, what was once the last curated biome on Earth is a cracked blister in the dirt, still glowing, still beautiful in a way that feels like an accusation. The hum of the regulator finally dies with a little descending whine, like a toy winding down. Silence rushes in. I stand there with my hands dangling, and for a second, 1 heartbeat, 2, I want to rage and pitch something and curse the sun by its middle name. Instead, I just nod. You learn, walking through endings, that anger is loud and endings prefer whispers. Thank you, I tell the blister. You did good. The wind answers by rolling a curl of ash across my boot. Past the domes, the ground splits. The Chrono Archive vault doesn't look like a building. It looks like the planet tried to yawn and then thought better of it. A chasm opens in a jagged ellipse, maybe 50 meters across, ringed in heat-glassed rock. Down inside, levels spiral into a glow that's not quite natural and not quite artificial, the way a candle in the stained glass is both. Thin cables stretch across the gap like silk threads. They hum with induction. This place is alive. I ease along the lip of the fissure. The air pouring out is cooler, like the earth itself is exhaling through broken teeth. The inside walls are studded with vault doors, panels, honeycombed archive cells. Each one is labeled in a script that shifts as I look. Arabic into Mandarin into binary into something that looks suspiciously like emoji. Adaptive indexing. Cute. Every 8th segment, a crystal pillar runs the depth of the fissure, slowly pulsing. Memory spines, redundancy on desperation. There's a speaker grill set into a basalt outcrop near me. It's tiny, 2 thumb widths across. There's something so heartbreakingly earnest about that. Last testament of humanity, delivered by a device the size of a coin slot. It clicks. The sound that comes out is not a voice, not at first. It's a wash, a river of noise. Static, yes, but warm, full, layered. It swells up the shaft and presses against me, like a hug you didn't expect but needed anyway. Then, inside the static, threads start surfacing. Remember to water. No, you hang up first. If anyone finds this, tell Maya Ave Maria, Gracia Plena. We were here, we were here, we were here. Doesn't hurt. I'm just tired. Sunrise over the Mare Serenitatis was laughter, real laughter, the loose, unself-conscious kind you hear when people forget to perform. A child's voice giggles, then gasps. A chorus of voices sings off-key. It sounds like a birthday. Someone whispers in what I think is Zulu. Someone else mutters a joke about taxes. Taxes. Till the last minute, of course. The messages overlap, fold, repeat, crash into one another in a way that should be messy. But somehow it's not. It's like standing in a cathedral built entirely out of people saying goodbye. I close my eyes and let it run through me. This was the plan, I remember. When the biosphere started to unravel, and the oceans went on strike, and the atmosphere thinned, and the UV index began openly mocking SPF, they built vaults. Of course they did. We're hoarders of memory. We save seed, we save code, we save names, we save recipes, we save jokes, we save lullabies. We save the way our mother said our name when she was tired. The Chrono Archive was supposed to transmit forever, a beacon in the crust, broadcasting outward, up, away, in case anyone out there wanted to know who lived here and how we tried. The signal was meant to ride solar wind and deep space relay webs, a bottle thrown into a universal ocean. By now, the relays are dust. The ocean is boiling off the beach. So the vault does the only polite thing left. It turns the antenna inward. It plays it back for us. The internet's last post, I whisper. My throat feels tight and grainy, and for once the comment section stayed kind. The pulse continues. You can hear prayers in a dozen languages, but the tone is the same. Tenderness with urgency stapled to it. You can hear jokes cracking through fear like light through old shutters. You can hear resignation and defiance, and that weird human instinct to tidy up right before the meteor hits. Keys are in the drawer, plants are watered, love you, bye. I sit down on the lip of the fissure, legs dangling over heat-smooth stone that still radiates a faint warmth from the planet's cooling heart. The ash smell from the domes drifts in and braids with the mineral breath of the vault, life and record braided like rope. This is what we leave behind. Not monuments, not thrones. Voices. The drone that's been following me settles beside my hip like a patient metal dog. One of its sensor vanes flickers blue, then purple, then blue again, like it's trying to decide how to grieve. I rest my hand on its hull. It hums. In the distance, past the dead domes and the dying city, the sun throws another flare. The light washes over, the cracked ground in a slow red tide. Dust lifts in sheets and glows like embers airborne. For a moment, if you half close your eyes, the world looks alive again. Haze like morning mist, glimmer like dew, color like dawn. The trick of it almost hurts. Bittersweet, yes, that's a nice word. The rooter word is unfair. But here's the thing. We always wanted immortality. We built pyramids, epics, memory palaces, social media, backup drives, backup drives, time capsules, love letters, monuments to ourselves in orbit. We thought forever was the prize. We were wrong. Forever is not promised. Being heard is. And right now, at the end of the last morning, humanity is still speaking to itself, whispering into its own bones, refusing to go quietly, but doing it gently. I let the vault's chorus wash over me until the static starts to thin and the last overlapping voices taper into a soft rising tone, like a breath being held. Okay, I say softly to the empty domes, to the archive, to the sun, to you. We keep walking. I stand, brush ash from my knees, and the drone lifts with me, loyal to the bit. Ahead, The ground tilts toward the horizon where the ocean used to live, and somewhere beyond that, the air already shimmers with heat, haze thicker than air should be. The next places wait. The shore that's no longer shore, the towers out on what used to be water, the edge where Earth starts to crack like old pottery. The planet keeps exhaling. I fall into step with it. Chapter 3. The Sea That Forgot. The wind smells like a chemistry set that lost the instructions. I crest a dune that used to be a wave and come face to face with the great sea wall, which is really several generations of panic welded together and then politely abandoned. It runs off in both directions until the haze eats it, a cathedral of rust and old intentions. Close up, the plates bloom with salt like frost grown sideways. Barnacles fossilized mid-grip stud the seams. Frayed nets hang in stiff curtains, entombed in a glaze of minerals. In another age, people sprayed champagne on ships. Here, the ocean did the christening and then forgot to stay for the party. Beyond the wall, where the water once rehearsed infinity, is a basin scoured to the bone. Sand has become glass in patches, pale, rippled, warped like melted windows. The soundscape is tidal but wrong. No crash, no thump, just a long hiss, like sandpaper on a violin string. The air carries a low fizz, too, a pop, pop, pop at the edge of hearing. It takes me a minute to realize it's the ground exhaling. I drop from the wall onto the former sea floor. It crunches under my boots in a way that makes my teeth shy. The drone shadows me, its rotors a tired buzz, like a giant mosquito that promised to behave. Chemical foam clings and drifts around old pylons, pale blue, greenish, the colors water should have been and wasn't. As I walk, bubbles swell and burst with a soft cough, releasing a faint mist that glows around my ankles, a ghost that can't remember who it's supposed to haunt. Methane fizzes in a shallow depression, invisible until a spark somewhere. Friction, static, the universe's sense of humor, kisses it, and the whole patch puffs into a silent flame. The heat lifts a sheet of dried salt from the ground, curls it like paper, and lays it down again with the delicacy of a weaver. I watch a dozen of those flares open and close along the basin like ghost flowers greeting a sun they'll never understand. The sea left quietly, I say, more to the wall than to you, like a lover packing their things in the dark. No slammed doors, no farewell storm, just the sound of drawers opening and closing, the soft click of a latch, the place where the toothbrush isn't. At the base of a broken mooring tower, something catches the light and winks. I dig with my glove and bring up a ring of plastic can tabs braided with fishing line. A charm bracelet of cheap hope. Nearby, a school of metal fish is half buried. Autonomous trawlers the size of dogs, fins dulled with salt. Their status LEDs still blink at different intervals, trying to tell a network that doesn't exist that dinner is on the way. One twitches when I nudge it, motors chittering, a reflex from a play that ended before its entrance. I lay a hand on its hull. "You did your job," I tell it. "We were just late." The wall's shadow gives me a map. I follow it to a staircase and climb into sunlight that feels like a verdict. The other side of the wall drops into a wilderness of steel and scaffolding, the Martian seed vault launch platform, which is a mouthful for "we tried to mail the future to Mars and the address bounced." The pads sit in a grid across the dry harbor, each a round scar with black scorch rings, ladders like vertebrae, towers bristled with guidance vanes and antennae that now point at nothing. The air smells of baked metal and old ozone. Along one catwalk, a string of prayer flags is fused to the railing. They no longer flap, they shine. Prayers turned into enamel. If that isn't on brand, I don't know what is. Heavier machines sleep where they stopped. A gantry crane hunches, its hook frozen inches above a crate stenciled seeds. The S half melted, so it reads seeds, seas, seas, like the box itself is trying to testify. Pressure tanks squat with faded hazard sigils. Their paint has bubbled into little continents. A stack of centrifuge drums rests under a skeletal tarp. The tarp is a plate of glass now, ripples catching light like water used to do when we were younger, and the planet was forgiving. And yet, movement, not human, but diligent. A maintenance drone zips along a cable tray, stopping every 10 meters to spit a little gout of repair resin into a hairline crack. Another shuttles between a spool and a mast, laying a neat loop of superconducting wire with an artistry any grandma would recognize from quilting. A third is methodically polishing scorch marks from a launch ring. Their little task lights wink in sequence, a slow pulse across the platform like heartbeat monitors in an empty ward. One turns its cracked lens toward me. It hovers. The lens irises open and shut. F8, F2, F8, like an eye struggling to focus on a memory. "Awaitin' uplink," it chirps in a voice that has been scraped down to bare tone. "Awaitin', awaitin'." "Sorry," I tell it gently. "Management's not taking calls today." It hovers there for a second, as if the words must be a problem it can fix. Then it rotates, resumes its patrol, and tidies up a puddle that evaporates faster than it can be organized. If futility had a mascot, it would be this little hero with a clipboard and a mandate. A launch tower nearby has slumped just enough to make the stairs feel like a drunk's idea of level. I climb anyway. From halfway up, the basin arranges itself into a geometry that makes a cracked kind of sense. The wall like a jawbone, the pads like teeth, the dry sea floor a tongue baked white. The old harbor cranes in the far distance resemble striding lizards. Between them, mirage pools wink in and out, convincing and cruel. On the platform's top deck, a windsock made of thermal fabric stands at perfect attention, starched by heat into a permanent salute. The control cabin door is propped open with a length of pipe. Inside, consoles glow in low-power modes. Speckled displays run status loops that haven't encountered new data in years. Pressurize, check. Fuel line, check. Payload, check. Humanity, pending. Someone has taped a photograph above the primary switch bank. 4 people in flight suits, mouths open in laughter, cheeks sunburned, hair flattened by helmets, removed only for the camera. On the back, in faded marker, "Next time for sure." I leave it where it is. It's holding the ceiling up better than any beam. A siren coughs once, remembers it's tired, and gives up. The drone that followed me settles on the sill, peers down at the pad, emits an electronic sigh I'm pretty sure is just my conscience ventriloquizing. Beyond the wall, the desert that used to be ocean answers with another round of hush and pop, hush and pop. Tiny flares blink like will-o'-the-wisps across the white. The air above them dances. The horizon goes soft-edged and then returns with a sunburn. I sit on the edge of the deck and let my legs swing over a drop that would have made my stomach do gymnastics back when atmosphere took more interest in gravity. The steel is hot through my suit, the kind of heat that says, I am not joking. The smell up here is all ghosts, salt, ion, carbon, oil, a whiff of something sweet that might be old coolant or optimism decomposing. There's an absurd dignity to it, this place. We built a bridge out of rockets and asked the future to meet us halfway. The future RSVP'd perhaps, and then the venue flooded, and then dried, and then caught fire. Still, the cleaning crew shows up. Still, the lights hum. Still, somewhere, a server pings a system that isn't there and waits the appropriate amount of time before concluding it should try again. It's okay, I tell the machines, the wall, the readers of status screens, the photo on the tape. You kept faith. A breeze slides a glitter of salt across the deck. It sounds like applause made of glass. When I climb down, the drone with the cracked lens follows me to the pad's center. It hovers close, then drifts back as if recognizing a boundary. I step into the scorched ring, look up through a grid of tower arms at a sun that has grown into a monarch too big for its crown. The platform beneath me ticks as heat expands it into shapes the engineers never signed off on. Somewhere, deep in the foundation, there's a settled groan. It reminds me of old ships at dock, wood and tar and rope exhaling together. I rest my palm on the ring's edge. The metal vibrates, faintly, aligned to frequencies that once meant countdown. The habit of launching has sunk into it like prayer into stone. No one has told it that the congregation left. 5, I say, because sometimes rituals deserve an echo. 4, 3, 2, 1. Silence obliges with the small, almost affectionate hiss, methane flirting with air one basin over. All right, I murmur. Onward. Past the pads, the earth tilts toward what used to be shoreline, now a bright scab where the crust split and bled a little. Beyond that, the distant silhouettes of towers rise from the dry sea, relics of coastal cities dragged offshore on pylons when the water came for them. Architecture practicing denial until the curriculum changed. We'll go there next, you and I, down the artery where waves once argued with continents, past the polite machines and the impolite heat, toward the horizon that won't stop moving the goalposts. The sea forgot. The machines remembered. Between them, we keep walking. Chapter 4. The Temples of Code and Bone. The cathedral looks like it learned binary and then forgot Latin. I step through what used to be the nave door, oak once, now a heat-twisted sculpture, into a nave lined not with pews but towers of servers, black monoliths stacked to the clerestory like a congregation that insists on standing. The stained glass is mostly gone, saints and martyrs melted into jewel-toned tears that streak down stone ribs and congeal on the floor in the puddles of ruby, cobalt, and sickly lime. What fragments remain cast fractured icons across the racks, halos broken into pixels, a Madonna resolved at 12 by 12. The air hums with residual charge, a low devotional note that seems to vibrate in my ribs more than my ears. Somewhere, deep in the sacristy of circuitry, a fan clicks, starts, remembers there's nothing left to cool, and sighs itself back to stillness. Someone left votive candles along the center aisle years ago, little glass cups inside, which engineers once lit hope before deployment. Their wax slumped and fossilized, the wicks pinned tiny funerals in place. Overhead, where a rose window used to argue with God about glory, the hole gapes like an open throat. Light pours through it in a column and picks up dust into galaxies. Motes rotate in stately orbits, reverent, ridiculous. If you squint, you can convince yourself the place is still in use. The big switchgear along the transept blinking once a year like an annual heartbeat, status diodes that refuse to quit out of sheer professionalism. I pass a rack with its faceplate torn away. Rows of drive sleds stare at me like teeth, most empty, some still holding pitted rectangles labeled with marker. Liturgy backup, WAN 18, census MISC, weather arch. A strip of masking tape across one reads, in handwriting gone faint with heat, "Do not erase." We did, of course, not on purpose. Erasure is our default setting. The floor is tiled in worn limestone scored by centuries of knees. Through the stone, heat has been teaching a new lesson. I feel it first as a pressure, like the building inhaling through the crypt, then as a tremor, shy at first and then confident. A low growl rolls through the nave, bowls in the choir loft rattle a skittering applause, and from the apse a crack begins with the decisiveness of a final opinion. It snakes along the center aisle toward me, elegant as cursive, splitting pale stone with a series of soft snaps that feel obscene in the quiet. I step aside. The fisher kisses a bundle of fiber and opens it like a vein. Light that has been trapped and muttering for decades spills out in a faint, unhealthy glow. Optical strands bleeding photonic sap. The heat swells, and the lead came beneath a surviving stained glass fragment softens. An iris of molten color bulges up through the crack, oozes onto the tile, and spreads in a lucent tongue. It looks like blood imagined by a jeweler. Instinct makes me back against a rack. Palmed. Steel. The server tower is warm, almost gentle, the way a sleeping animal is warm. The tremor peters out into shivers. Dust settles. From somewhere under the nave, a bell I do not want to think about gives one lonely, seismic note, stone speaking stone. "Point taken," I whisper to the architecture. "We'll keep this visit brisk." I angle through the side aisle, past a confession booth reborn as a patch panel cabinet. The confessional's lattice is half fused, the little booth reeking of old varnish and ghosted breath. A brittle printout is pinned beneath the crucifix. Incident: critical power surge. Cause: solar event. Underneath, someone has drawn a smiley face with horns. In times of crisis, we all become medieval. At the crossing where transept meets nave, a lectern survives, warped into a bow. On it lies a leather-bound folio swollen with heat and humidity, an ancient missal appropriated as a maintenance log. I thumb it open with caution and read in contrasting hands. Firmware updated. Prayers said. Both succeeded. The last entry is shorter. If anyone reads this, say a psalm for the checksum. I do, if a psalm can be a breath that remembers the shape of words. Outside, the churchyard has surrendered its grass to crusts of glassy grit. Footsteps sound like breaking sugar. The observatory isn't far. This was the fashion once, coupling sanctuaries to instruments, faith and optics sharing a lawn. It crouches on the knoll like a white pupil gone cataract. Its dome blistered and scratched the way a record is scratched when a party got away from you. The slit is jammed, half open. The rails that once rotated the dome are red with lacework rust, delicate and lethal. I climb past a door that has fused to its frame and find the stair. The metal treads heat through my boots, branding iron warm, persuasive. On the catwalk, the big tube of the telescope rests at an angle, cradled in a fork mount that has sagged 6 degrees from a lifetime of gravity and a late life of melt. The lens cap, cracked like ice, dangles by a strap and taps the tube with a patient, hollow clink. Someone has tied a ribbon to the eyepiece, faded to the color of yesterday's sky. It flutters in the convection like a whisper that can't remember what it was trying to say. The control console is a museum of buttons and primary colors and toggle switches that beg to be flipped. Most of the labels have cooked off. The ones still legible read like charms. Track, damp, guide, hope. Hope is a Sharpie edit, I'm sure, but I admire the hack. A sheaf of star charts is fused to the desk in a relief map of constellations you can navigate with your fingertips. The station clock's hands are warped into a Dali shrug. On a blotter, penned with the fussy care of a person who expected to be quoted, someone has written, "Do not anthropomorphize the sun. It does not love you. It does not hate you. It simply wins." I lean to the eyepiece. The glass is fissured. Hairline cracks fan from one edge like frost, or like the lines that gather at the corner of an eye that has seen too much. I close one eye, press the other to the rim, and the world narrows to the red anatomy of our old god. It fills the field, obscene and glorious, not a disk so much as a wound that forgot how to close. The color isn't one color. It is a dozen reds performing a choir, each a different note: bruised plum, arterial, salmon dying on ice, the flash you see behind your eyelids when you press too hard. The surface crawls, not hurriedly, but inevitably. Prominences curve outward and fall back in the slow parabolas so vast that entire histories could be tucked into them and mislaid. Magnetic loops arch like the ribs of a cathedral that forgot which way gravity points. Filaments writhe, black snakes against the blaze. Here and there, a flare peels loose and unrolls in a sheet, a bright banner torn by wind that doesn't exist here. You can almost hear it. Breathing, I say, voice small against the big heat. Oh, gods, don't die quietly. The cracked lens lays spiderwebs across the image. The fractures become a grid, and the sun wears them like penance, a king dressed in his own net. Each breath I take fogs the eyepiece for an instant, and for a fraction of a moment I get to erase the star. When the fog clears, it returns, patient, terrible, like a truth you tried not to know. The domed roof ticks as expansion argues with rivets. The floor hums, deep frequency, tectonic, the continent shifting its weight on a chair that was never meant to hold it this close to the heater. Through the split in the dome, the air above the plains stutters. Heat ghosts walk the horizon. In the valley below, the Cathedral of Data looks suddenly modest, a child's block castle nudged by a giant's foot. A drawer under the console is stuck. I persuade it with a knee, and it surrenders an inventory of relics. Lens, cloths starched into parchment, a roll of black electrical tape that is melted into a candied wheel, a flask of something once brown, and now the color of amnesty. Tucked beneath, a photograph of the observatory staff. 6 figures in lab coats, one in a cassock, all grinning at a cake iced with a crude red circle and the words, "First Light." On the back, the same hand that penned the blotter, "Afterlight will be ours too." I slip the photo back into the drawer and close it as if putting a child to bed. Outside, the wind lifts and presses against the dome with a soft, insistent palm. The slit moans. Down in the churchyard, a crack widens. The jewel blood from the nave reaches another vein of glass and brightens as if remembering color. The world is unseaming itself, stitch by stitch, not out of malice, but out of heat, which is the same thing at this scale. The eyepiece fogs again. I let it. Behind my fog, the sun is tamed into a blush. When it clears, the star is the star, huge, indifferent, fond of nothing. Science and worship are not enemies here. They share a pew like siblings at a funeral. Bone and code, chant and chart, eyes raw for different reasons in the same one. The instrument points. The sanctuary hums. The ground trembles through both like an organ note too low to name. "I see you," I tell the star, which does not care. "We saw you as long as we could." The dome gives one long, aching creak, the sound of a neck stretching to watch the last act. I take my hand from the console, leave my thumbprint in a patch of dust, a small moon for some future archaeologist who will never come. When I step back onto the stairs, the ribbon at the eyepiece lifts and brushes my wrist like a blessing someone forgot to cancel. We've got 2 more stops before the horizon folds its cards. Bone to code, machine to prayer. The long day is learning to pronounce our names, and it's getting very good at it. The edge of air. The sky bridge begins like a miracle humanity built for itself when it still believed in climbing. The glass under my boots flexes with each step. Barely, but enough to remind me that even miracles have engineering tolerances. The cables hum from strain and altitude, the sound thin and uncertain, like a violin string trying to remember its last note. Below me, the land is not land anymore. It's a faded mural of extinction. Rust dunes, bleached rock, and the fossil of an ocean too polite to leave a goodbye note. Each breath now feels like borrowing from a stingy bank. The air is dry, crisp, and mean. It cuts going in, burns coming out. My lungs hitch, then grind forward, like old machinery that never wanted this promotion. The pressure is lower up here, so low that sound travels lazy and late, as though the world is being narrated from another room. I check the horizon. The blue is draining out of it. What's left is a pallid white that keeps getting whiter. The sun above, our aging landlord, is swollen and ugly, pulsing like a tired heart, too proud to stop. Every few seconds, it flares, shedding bits of itself in tantrums that streak across the sky and dissolve into dust before reaching me. That dust used to be sunlight. Now it's shrapnel. My head swims. Vision flickers. The bridge narrows, the railing on either side almost transparent. A mile beneath me, the final forest gleams, an emerald scar clinging to the earth's brittle skin. The coolant veins running through it flash blue-white, pulsing like arteries. I know it's dying down there too, roots sucking the last trickles of oxygen from air that's more idea than element. But from here it almost looks peaceful, like nature herself is pretending for the sake of the view. Then the first cough hits. It starts as a tickle in the throat, then blooms into a full seizure of air. My chest contracts. My ribs groan like an old ship. The sound that comes out of me isn't human. It's a wheeze broken by static. My lungs reach for something that isn't there anymore. I stagger to the railing and press a hand to the glass, feeling it tremble beneath my weight. The air's given its 2 weeks' notice, I manage to whisper between gasps, and it's not finishing the shift. The humor tastes metallic on my tongue, but it keeps me from panicking. I focus on the horizon again, wide, pale, infinite. The color's almost gone now. Blue, the color of life, of sky, of oceans, of every childhood memory we ever romanticized. It's evaporating right in front of me. We were born under it. We painted gods into it. Now it's resigning with the same quiet grace as a saint tired of answering prayers. I take another step forward, or maybe the bridge moves under me, I can't tell. The world is a slow bleed of motion. My breathing becomes the soundtrack, rasp in, shallow out. Rasp in, shallower out. Each inhale feels less like air and more like nostalgia, thin, precious, almost gone. It occurs to me, between one dry cough and the next, that this was always our fate. Not judgment, not karma, just physics, just time. Humanity survived everything else. War, ice, fire, algorithms, bad governance, worse love songs. We beat extinction until it got bored of trying. But we never beat the calendar. The sun was always going to betray us, not out of cruelty, but completion. It gave us everything, and like all generous parents, it kept the receipt. I press my forehead against the cold glass. It feels solid, more than I do. The wind is faint now, high and whispering, like breath caught in a dying throat. Each word, I think, comes out slower than I mean it. Maybe that's how the end of air works. It stretches thought before it silences it. Below, the forest shimmers. Leaves lift and tremble, fanning upward toward the thinning light. Between them, drones flit, silver insects tracing careful circles, mapping photosynthesis that can't keep up with death. A few tilt and rise too high. Their engines choke, propellers flail, and then they're caught by gravity's last argument. One spins toward me, flickering like a coin tossed by fate. It lands hard on the glass beside me. The casing splits. A tiny hiss escapes, like the last breath of something too small to notice. I kneel beside it. Its lens winks, cracked but curious. I touch it gently with a gloved finger. Everything wants to rise, I whisper, my voice hoarse and far away, even the things that can't. The drone's light fades, a slow pulse that becomes a single dim bead of silver. I think of the first ones we sent to Mars, our metal pilgrims. I think of the way we built gods from circuitry, prayers from code, and faith from progress. We made the heavens mechanical and the machines devout. We always believed that if we built high enough, smart enough, long enough, we could outrun the end. But here I am, kneeling over a dead drone while the sky erases itself, proof that the finish line was always circular. Another gust sweeps through, or maybe that's my last deep breath pretending to be weather. My vision narrows to a tunnel. The horizon flickers. For a terrifying instant, I can see the curvature of the earth perfectly, the faint halo of atmosphere clinging like silk. It's paper-thin, trembling, beautiful. The planet looks smaller now, lonelier, as if embarrassed by its own mortality. I fall back onto the glass, flat, staring upward. My chest rises in jerks. My heart feels like it's trying to kick its way out. Each beat slower, then louder, then slower again. The air is gone. I am breathing memory. My tongue is dust. And still, I can't look away. Above me, the sun, our murderer and mother, pulses in gold and red, veins of plasma writhing like thought. It breathes, if you can call it that, in waves that crawl through the emptiness. I can almost feel it, not on my skin, deeper, in the bones, a low vibration, rhythmic, ancient. Old gods don't die quietly, I murmur, but my voice is gone to the wind. There's irony in that, I think. We feared apocalypse in every myth, built bunkers, wrote code, cloned forests, and all along, it wasn't wrath or war or our arrogance that finished us. It was the most natural thing in the universe, a star doing what stars do, dying on schedule, fulfilling the promise of thermodynamics. Maybe that's the real cosmic joke. You spend 1 billion years building toward forever, and forever has an expiration date stamped in ultraviolet. The edges of my vision go soft, then dissolve. The glass beneath me hums faintly, almost kind. Somewhere below, the coolant systems of the final forest sigh one last time. Then, nothing but the wind pretending to remember what sound was. As the last air leaves me, I feel lighter, an unmooring, a quiet surrender. My last thought isn't fear or regret. It's a strange, stubborn gratitude. We made it this far. We saw it all. We gave the void something beautiful to miss. The bridge creaks, the sky folds itself thinner, and with what breath remains, I whisper to the dying world. Maybe this was always the plan. Chapter 6. The Final Reflection. The land ahead looks like a cracked mirror trying to remember what it reflected. Heat haze shimmers in sheets, folding the horizon so it becomes two horizons, then one. Like the world can't decide how many exits it needs. The air tastes mineral and old, like licking the lid of a volcano, and my boots crunch across a crust of glass that used to be sand. Every step leaves a crisp white scar. Then the ground speaks. It's not a sound, exactly, more a conviction that arrives through the bones. A low, patient thrum rolls beneath me, the way a cathedral organ rolls through your ribs before the note ever reaches your ears. The crust flexes in a slow exhale. Fissures snake forward in glossy black, then blush with red as if embarrassed to be seen. Molten seams bloom underfoot, glowing like veins through thin skin. The planet is not breaking. It's adjusting its posture for the end. The rift of silence, I say, and my voice feels like graffiti on a monument. The earth answers by widening a crack with the confidence of fresh handwriting. A gout of gas hisses up and shivers into the thinning air. The vibration steadies into a rhythm, a beat too old to care about accompaniment. Plates grind, not angrily, but with an immense, relieved fatigue. Imagine a giant unbuckling an armor it has worn for 4 billion years, and finally letting the straps fall. I stand still and let it pass through me. The heat wavers, the sky bleaches. A sliver of rock shears from the lip of the rift and drops with the dignity of a king stepping off a stage. Somewhere far below, it meets magma with a sound like a swallowed drum. For a moment, the reverberation and my pulse are the same thing. Even endings deserve applause, I murmur. The ground obliges with another long, subterranean ovation. I move on, threading between seams that glow like chapter headings. Ahead, the terrain calms into an impossible geometry, a perfectly circular basin ringed by teeth of obsidian. At its center, stillness, not a ripple, not a breath, a lake so flat it erases depth, so exact it looks drawn with a compass by a god who hated erasers. The mirror lake at twilight's edge. It mirrors everything perfectly and nothing honestly. The swollen sun hangs above me in bruised gold. It hangs below me as well, even larger, a coin sinking through black glass. The flame-red prominences drool downward in perfect imitation, so convincing I can't tell which star is the original and which is the forgery. I ease toward the shore until the tips of my boots threaten to be their own constellations. The air here is heavier with the sweet rot stink of gas, methane and something stranger, the breath of an old ocean reissued in a new edition. A thin film rides the surface, oily and opalescent, turning each insect lens glint of light into an accusation. The silence is engineered. The lake holds the world in its mouth and refuses to chew. Neat trick, I say, a horizon that learned to sit. A low spooning of wind curls across the basin. The surface dimpled, once, twice, then smoothed itself with a prim shiver. The sun above drops a degree lower, which is to say a lifetime. The color deepens from copper to blood orange. I imagine priests of a dozen centuries trying to name this shade and settling on words like omen and sacrament. A bubble lifts from the depths, fat as a prayer, and breaks with a kiss. The released breath snakes across the film and catches a stray spark. Maybe static from my coat, maybe friction's final party trick. Fire takes like memory, quietly, everywhere at once. It starts as a whisper. A thin, translucent flame races outward, a line of light skittering spider-quick across the sheen. Then the circle becomes a clock of fire, and every second is now. The blaze fans in silent petals devouring nothing and illuminating everything. A slow orange iris opening across the eye of the lake. The reflection and the real sun lock onto each other, mirror and source becoming a single bloomin' wound of light. The morning finally met its reflection, I say, and the words feel like the last page turning. Heat presses my cheeks. The fire doesn't crackle. It murmurs in soft vowels as if practicing a language too gentle for endings. In the glass of the water, the red giant smears into a halo, and for one foolish heartbeat, I think I see faces in it, the composite of a species looking back at itself. Pilgrims and coders, potters and thieves, queens, janitors, children with sticky hands and open mouths, all of us pulled thin as gold leaf and laid over the surface of a dying world. The rift behind me grinds again, a tectonic sigh, and a vein of lava winks in approval at the lake's new makeup. Smoke lifts in blue ribbons and refuses to rise very far, stopped by the anemia of the sky. The air tastes bitter and complicated. I can feel my lungs negotiating each inhale like a contract with poor terms. I take a step closer and watch a thin tongue of flame stretch toward my reflection. For a moment, the silhouette in the water seems more solid than the body throwing it. I've spent so long walking through time I sometimes forget I'm made of it. We all were. That was the magic and the trap. We were amber pretending to be sap. We were smoke pretending to be flame. I think of the first hand that painted a bison on a cave wall and captured movement in ochre. I think of the first child to cup river water and drink, the first sailor to lose sight of land and call it adventure instead of mistake. I think of city lights seen from orbit, patient constellations of intention. I think of every apology we meant and every love we botched and tried again. The ledger is messy, sure. The miracle is that we kept balancing it. The fire slides across the lake's perfect skin and arrives at my boots as a gentle wave of warmth. It doesn't burn. It blesses. For the first time today, I am not tempted to laugh. The silence out here isn't absence. It's a courtesy. Behind the flames, the lake begins to darken by increments, the way sleep darkens the room while you insist you're still awake. The sun, above, below, pulses and swells, heart to heart, until the distinction feels childish. Heat nests in the bones of the world. The rift thrums with a slowing metronome. The wind downsizes. Even the horizon looks like it's taken off its shoes. If this is how it ends, well, we could have done worse than light. My shadow stretches long across the obsidian shore, thin as a line from a poem that learned how to walk. For once, it doesn't try to outrun me. For once, I don't try to outrun it. We stand together like old conspirators who have forgotten the plan and remember only the companionship. I look up at the red giant, our guilty parent, and find that I have no anger left for it. Entropy is just the universe's way of making room. We were the room for a while. We furnished it gaudy and tender. We hung our mistakes where strangers could see them. We left notes in the margins. Try kindness next time. Don't forget music. Water first, always water. A final bubble breaks near the center, and the fire licks it away with the care of a mother wiping a child's face. The circle of flame completes itself and then, slowly, begins to thin. The lake returns to mirror as gently as it left. Above, the sun lowers like a curtain. The world bows. Nobody boos. I let out the breath I didn't know I was holding. Thin, but still mine. The rift's pulse fades into a hum. The lake's surface resets to perfect. The silence here is no longer waiting. It's keeping. It feels like a librarian's smile. I turn once because ritual matters and memorize what can't be memorized. The seam bright earth, the glassy shore, the circle of water where light learned to tell the truth. Then I face you, yes, you, wherever you are, and give the only benediction I have left. Rest easy, sleepy heads. The rabbit hole of time holds many more slow steps. Until we meet again, Silas is signing off.